Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. So we're here to talk about building world-class change management playbooks for financial services. The webinar will provide insights into how digital playbooks can help teams navigate complex processes and drive project and change delivery for maximum results. So I'm your host, Muriel Barre. I think I have the pleasure to knowing most of you here, and I'm delighted to be joined by Pip Morpeth from Method Grid.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet you.
Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping rules to help us have a great webinar experience. So, first of all, the webinar is recorded. We will send you the slides and the recording immediately after the event. Second, we love interaction and engagement. So we've left 20 minutes for Q&A at the end. But if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to raise your hand or to obviously put your question in the chat and we'll make sure to address it. Third, we'd love to know what you think. So we'll send you a survey for feedback after the event, and we look forward to reconnecting. And then lastly, this is the first of a series of webinars and events. So we've got another really exciting event scheduled, which will focus on AI.
Shower.
Tell me.
Sorry, Muriel, I should have been on mute there. Apologies.
Not to worry. So yeah, I hope everybody hears me. So that's great. Right. So yeah, those are our housekeeping rules. So we have lots to discuss today. So to do so, I'm very pleased to introduce Pip from Method Grid. Pip, thank you for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks. Really nice to meet you, everyone. Just to kind of help you kind of with the session, what I thought I would do is just help you understand the kind of problem that we're trying to solve with Playbooks, and then just go into a bit of the thinking about what they are, the kind of foundations you kind of have to put in place to implement them successfully. Probably with most interactions, everyone wants to see what a playbook actually looks like, and it's kind of a different approach. So we've got time just to show you what one looks like to kind of bring it to life. Okay. And then, like Muriel said, we've got plenty of time for sort of questions, Q&A at the end. All right. This slide is intentionally very busy. But realistically, it's just trying to help us get to the kind of articulate the problem statement that we're trying to solve, and try and do that very quickly. And for those that know nothing about Method Grid, this is the sole problem that we focus our business on trying to solve, which is how do you kind of reduce the cost of poor quality that comes from inconsistent ways of doing things or inconsistent service delivery. And the kind of pain symptoms, I won't go through all of them. I'll just go through what everyone tells us, and I've highlighted those ones in red, which is the kind of main pain symptoms we find is organizations will say, look, yeah, we kind of recognize the way that we do things is inconsistent. You know, we have two good projects, then we have a really bad one, or it's kind of the teams find it really difficult to be effective. You know, they constantly, they can't find the information they need. They don't know who to speak to get the advice that they need. And often what this leads to is six, which is just that kind of behavior, which is teams constantly reinventing the wheel. And there's two types of reinventing the wheel. There's the kind of natural human behavior, which is I want to solutionize, I want to design something, or I've just spent 2 days building something and someone just told me, yeah, I don't know why I've done that. You should have looked here and here, and it's in this folder. And it's kind of, all right, thanks for telling me. And 7 naturally just tends to be, staff find it very difficult to build their own kind of internal network, and it takes them a long time for them to actually understand exactly how we do things in this business and how to do it consistently and what the standards are. So that's the kind of common pain symptoms. When people come to Method Grid, this is normally the kind of pain points they have. And the so what for us was, well, okay, look, I think everyone knows it. You have to, one, provide clarity on process. And, we'll deal with the real abstract. Actually, we haven't written it down. We just rely on good people. Or it kind of matures to the other side, which is, do you know what? We've written it down. We've built this massive SharePoint. But if I'm honest, I just feel like it sits on a shelf and nobody uses it. And that's the main driver, which is I've written it all down, but if I'm honest, I've got no real confidence that actually the way things are done, I couldn't tell you if people are consistent with it. I couldn't tell you if they've tailored it right. And I can't tell you across my whole portfolio whether actually, we are compliant to ways of working. And the reason I highlight the red, compliance as red, is everyone we speak to is always dealing with that challenge. The third point is people capability, which is, yes, I can write it down, I can put the tools in place to track it, but unless I'm going to equip people with the confidence to apply it, they will just default to what they know. The kind of, if I want people to try a new way of working or just apply the company way, there's nothing much apart from a Prince 2 course and an MSP course, but nothing about how that actually translates in our organization. Then lo and behold, their natural fear response will be to default to what they feel comfortable in and what they feel confident in. So the kind of people capability element is really how we integrate learning and training resources into ways of working to make it a lot easier for people to build that confidence in execution. And then 4, the kind of residual risk fact is, we will mainly use playbooks in program, project delivery, large scale procurement, or bid or merger and acquisitions. So there'll always be naturally kind of audit and assurance, and there'll be a set of standards we want people to follow. What we find is, those standards aren't easy to access. They're not very clear, and people get frustrated with the fact that, I didn't know I need to do this. And then when it comes to kind of audit and assurance, they spend a lot of time, where's this, where's that? And there's a lot of questions going backwards and forwards between assurance and the teams. And actually what we're trying to help with playbooks is to make that really transparent. So that's the kind of really the kind of pain point on the page. And we did this talk recently with SSE at a different conference, which was understanding the compliance problem. And what we call this is, and if you work in sort of architecture, engineering, construction, health and safety, you might have come across this before, but the thing that we're trying to fix with playbooks is what we call organizational drift, which is, you walk into any business and you'll say, look, this is how we do stuff around here. And there's a kind of 2 phrase to this answer, which is, look, work as imagined. This is in my head. I think this is how people are doing it. And I've also kind of, we've written it down, job done. I've written it in a document. Therefore, everyone's going to follow it. And what happens is, obviously, when you apply humans and time and quality into that, there's a disparity between how we imagine what people are doing and the kind of prescribed ways of working to a kind of reality of, well, actually, over time, there's a disparity between how we imagine things are doing and actually how work is actually done in operational practice. And, in some points, some people will, exceed the standard and they'll find smarter ways of doing something and it'll be innovative. But probably what's most common is this build up of accumulations of people not following process, not following kind of our standards, not meeting it. And actually it kind of accumulates to a point which is, it will create a kind of critical failure event. So there's kind of, yes, there's opportunities towards innovation, but actually what normally happens, which is that kind of dreaded phone call, which is, we've messed up, or we haven't done things. We didn't write requirements. We didn't do any change management with operations. We haven't engaged stakeholders. It comes to a point where, okay, we've made a critical failure. And what organizations really have to try and identify is the balance between, look, this is what we want to do, and what is the kind of critical quality level, which if we don't meet will result in a critical failure. And what we call this kind of process is really managing drift. And if you kind of work in project delivery, you work in operations, you are constantly fighting the battle of trying to reduce the variance of how the organization is drifting in how we execute processes. So hopefully that kind of sets the scene. I sort of talk really now about, this is the kind of focus about what we wanted to do with Playbooks, was to find a way to try and help organizations address not the clarity issue about just writing processes down, but how do you actually get teams to follow that process, use it, and it be of value to the individual. So what we came up with is the concept of process to playbook. And I'll show you this in a second, but what we realized is organizations, if we think about we're dealing with complex processes, if we go out to the technology market, we were like, look, if we go, we think we'll need to go and buy a knowledge management system, we think we'll need to go and buy a project management system, and then we'll need to stitch it together. What we decided to do, and thinking of it differently, was to think, well, if we try and merge knowledge management, project management together, and actually create a platform that allows organizations to build their own playbooks, that would be a better solution for teams and individuals, because we can say, well, look, this is what you need to do, and then this is how you do it. And if that's side by side, that's a bit easier for teams to understand in how they do it. And the other point was what we discovered when we put this live was organizations don't just want one playbook. Look, there's different methodologies that we want to use. We want an agile playbook. We want a waterfall playbook. We want a playbook for how we do this particular type of migration, because we're constantly repeating this type of project. And what we found was organizations started to use the platform just to start engineering different playbooks that would respond to different challenges that could be specialized and prioritized. The kind of playbook concept too is we've kept it really simple, and just to say, look, it's a kind of left to right. You can design your stages, you can build out your themes, so it might break down all the different components of your methodology, your approach, and how you do delivery. And we don't want to try and build a platform that's the single thing. We recognized that we wanted to integrate with systems that would provide people the kind of veneer across how you want to navigate complex processes and change. Now, the kind of next point is really what solves the kind of drift problem, because we got great feedback from clients initially to say, look, staff really like the playbook concept. And I think it was Mace and Turner and Townsend came back to us and they said, look, can you make it possible so that once we've built this playbook, we can clone it for every project and give that playbook to the project team and ask them to go and have a conversation, tailor it, right size it. They don't need all the deliverables, and this client might need to do this over here, or this team need us to do here, or this supplier requires us to produce these deliverables. We've never done it before, so we kind of need to adjust the playbook. So what we came up with is a concept that you build this master playbook, and then you can then clone it for each project, and you build instances of the playbook for every project. But what we're trying to do is give the teams the ability for them to tailor and right size the playbook for each approach. But once they've got their playbook for the project, they can then start to assign themselves the tasks, they can attach the evidence, they can tick things off. So the playbook isn't just a kind of knowledge resource, it becomes a resource by which we can track delivery progress, and also specify and include the kind of audit assurance tasks that say, well, look, we've got stage gates to go through, we've got specific tasks that need evidence uploaded to ensure that you're compliant. So that's the whole concept of what we call the modern playbook, which is, yes, I could go and build a playbook that's just static content, but if I did, it would just gather dust on the shelf. Actually, what we're trying to do is force sort of knowledge and playbooks into delivery so that it forces people to use them, but then it also forces them to improve them and get much richer feedback on, well, this template's useless, or we've built this new template, it was much better, can we add this to the master, so that the next clone benefits from that constant iteration and improvement. And there's the kind of standard stuff that you'd expect from a platform, which is the reporting bit. And yes, you can build dashboards and widgets in it. But actually, what we're more interested in is how we use machine learning and AI to leverage the data from clones to identify and drive improvements into ways of working. So the latest research project we're doing is with lessons learned, which is we ingest the client's lessons learned into the platform, and then the platform is pushing recommendations to users based on their project, based on where they are, and to say, by the way, we know either you've done something, so is it a good time to capture a lesson, either because this task has now moved from 10 days to 30, or you've moved this task from 15 down to 5, what have you done to allow it? So use the platform to kind of capture events, but also, allow the platform, by the way, I know you're doing this type of change, you haven't put this in your checklist, do you want to make and the platform push recommendations for you to kind of accept. And that's the kind of R&D that we're sort of specializing with on machine learning. Cool. So what do we mean by playbook? What we're trying to do with playbook is to say, well, look, there's loads of best practice out there. Normally clients will pick, the kind of primary one that they use, and secondary, like we're APM, actually, we're Prince 2 MSP, so we kind of want to use that. But essentially, yes, there's loads of best practice, and then there's loads of kind of enterprise knowledge and IP. And what we're trying to do with the playbook is to try and translate that into something that is practical, that teams can follow and use, that brings all of that knowledge together. Okay. And yeah, we'll send the slides out. I won't let you read this, but we've put a few definitions in here that sort of help you with what we mean by playbook. What we've also done, and this is kind of when we come to building world-class playbooks, there's the exciting bit of, okay, and I'll show you kind of what a playbook looks like in a second. Everyone gets really excited about, oh, well, I want to kind of build the playbook. There's my stages, there's my themes. I want to add the deliverables, the activities. What we find is a kind of laying the foundation steps, and there's a white paper that you can download. And the kind of key steps that we found that work well with clients was to say, look, when we build playbooks now, very rarely are we building like a project management playbook. What we tend to engineer is what we call a kind of enterprise delivery method, which is, yes, there is project management. Yes, there's change management. There's solution management. There's architecture. There's testing. Actually, what we're trying to design with this playbook is a means by which we can improve collaboration and how functions actually need to orchestrate and work together in order to kind of deliver integrated change. So a lot of the playbooks we focus on are, yes, they're actually enterprise delivery playbooks. The kind of project classification, I think you'll all know it, but yes, when we build playbooks, there will be a light version, there'll be a major version, and then there'll be somewhere in between, which is, we don't need all of the control products for a very simple project, but we do if it's a major investment and, we're spending more than 3 or 5 million. It's a big investment, therefore we would expect, much higher degrees of change. So project classification is just understanding how we categorize projects, but then also applying that into the playbook so that very quickly we can say, well, what type of project is it? Bang, okay, you've got a playbook that you can use for that type of project. Lifecycle and themes is quite consistent. Every organization is trying to codify and put projects or programs into a common lifecycle, common stages that they want all projects to go through. But also what we find with some of the consulting firms is actually what we have to translate is a universal language for life cycles, because some clients will operate with different frameworks. They'll work with government, they'll work with that. And it's basically how you translate your stages to how they link with other life cycles. What's becoming much more kind of the next stage of evolution for playbooks is job, family, and training. So when we build playbooks, yes, that we used to say, look, well, we're going to use common role definitions. We need standard RACI. We need standard decision rights. So we need kind of common definitions for the kind of roles in the job family. But what we've started building with clients now is to say, actually, well, we've got loads of e-learning resources on how to do risk management, how to do benefits management. Can we integrate those courses directly into the playbook? So, if someone, that they're asked to do, risk management or fill it in, they can actually access that e-learning directly from the playbook. So, and again, we've just started to do that with Network Rail, which is launching, basically integrating e-learning assets into the platform. And then there's kind of standards. Yes, we'll have to write standards, but what we tend to do is integrate those standards into the playbook so that it's really easy to access the information, and all of the controls and evidence that are needed to meet those standards basically become part of the playbook design. And then there's kind of audit and assurance. And the kind of guidance we give is, look, try and design your assurance framework around how you've structured the playbook in terms of stages and life cycles, and be clear on, look, what are the audit and assurance levels of confidence we need at each stage and for each theme in the playbook. If you want, the kind of download there is for the white paper, which kind of goes into more detail. Right. Conscious of time, but so I'm just going to go through give you a quick demo of what a playbook looks like. And the kind of wheel we go through is, look, we'll show you how you go about building a playbook, show you how you can then move that playbook into delivery. I'll quickly flash up the kind of audit or assurance audit controls. But the key bit we learned when we built the platform was, what we found is the enable bit or improvement was, and it was a bit of a surprise, was how much more feedback we were getting from users about how to improve the playbook. Once we put them into live and got them into pilot and active cloned assurance, teams were much more proactive in trying to fix ways of working and actually improve the asset. So just bear with me, and I'll just quickly bring a playbook in. Everyone see that?
Yeah, that works.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, this is sort of a playbook, and this one is program project delivery. So you can see that what it's articulating is the stages of the life cycle, and I can see the different stages of the life cycle right up to hopefully closure. You can build and define your own stage gates. So, and you can mark kind of, okay, this is a conditional pass. You can put in the overview, you can put in the objectives, you can define the kind of exit criteria that you want for that stage, right up to what evidence actually has to be uploaded that you need to see to actually pass and progress through that gate. Like I said, the themes, you can break the method down into your kind of different themes. So program project management, organization of governance, business change, benefits management, solution. You can basically break down the playbook to cover the kind of different functions to support that kind of enterprise delivery approach. And then you get into, there's some tasks, and this one's actually active. So I can click on and say, look, I need to do this in this stage for this theme. And this is the bit where what we're trying to do is to say, okay, well, look, if Sean's never done this before, here's a description of what we want you to do. Here's a video explainer. Here's the kind of tailoring guidance. Here's the RACI. Here's potentially what you do first, what you do next. Here's some hints and tips. But also what's very common now with clients is to say, look, okay, who's the expert in the firm that I can actually speak to just to get a bit more support, because this is the first time I've ever done it. I can also say, oh, well, look, this task wants me to produce a deliverable. So I can click on that task, and it'll bring up, okay, and some clients will build them out as product descriptions and say, okay, well, look, here's this product, here's the template, here's some examples, here's some toolkits, the quality criteria. And if I need to, the platform will allow me to say, well, look, I've never done this before, Harry. Have you got time for a quick chat, because I need a bit of support for this client? But what we're trying to do with the use of experts is really help people build up their right network rather than who's just in the office and who responds first. It's giving the users more context and who are the recommended people to speak to for more guidance and advice. And then we get into the, okay, well, I've codified this knowledge. I've got the kind of, I can see what all the deliverables are and the activities are. And then I can start to use the playbook, and I can see that I've got users that are assigned to the tasks. This is the kind of, I've got to get the PDD approved. And yes, I can try and click it and complete it, but we will specify that some tasks might need evidence uploaded. And so I've got to go in, interact with the platform, and I'll have to upload evidence. Just do this quickly. And we'll connect to kind of SharePoint, OneDrive, and I'll just quickly upload the evidence. And then the evidence is uploaded. I can tick that task off. And you'll start to see that teams can get a visual view of progress. They can obviously flag things that need more attention from the team. And we can activate the kind of visual management aspects and start to say, well, look, these tasks are all complete and green. So that's the kind of core concept of the playbook. Obviously, we've been doing a few things. What I said at the start was it's really giving you a platform that you can kind of build your own life cycle, your own stages. You can move them around. You can call them what you want. You could tailor the playbook. So I can say, well, actually, we can't do this deliverable here. We need to do it over here. So this gives the ability for the teams to be able to tailor and right size it. But also when it comes to kind of building playbooks, yes, you kind of start with a blank canvas. So I can go, okay, well, I'm building this playbook. I can choose how they kind of look and feel. I can say I want a description. And this is the concept that we came up with, was to say, as a platform, allow organizations to build their own playbooks because it's a lot more valuable and it gets stretched and pushed. And you can put your kind of tasks and checklists in there. The kind of latest bit, which is, yes, you can use templates to kind of say, well, I want a common look and feel for what a playbook looks like. So yes, I want standard elements and a format. Where we have been focusing our effort on as a business is to try and get AI to help clients build playbooks. And the kind of key shift for us was, how do you get playbooks built in kind of 4 to 6 weeks into pilot so you can start getting feedback quickly? So yeah, I can put in a statement of work as a deliverable, and rather than me write what a statement of work is, you can tailor, you can do prompt engineering on particular templates and say, well, this is a deliverable. I want AI to go away and I want it to give me at least, write the purpose of what a statement of work is, give me the objectives, potentially suggest some of the activities that I might need to think about. It's put in the objectives, it's put in, format and composition. What's the quality criteria? It needs a bit of training, but again, once we train it on the roles, it will normally produce the kind of produce review or RACI or rapid if you're using for decision rights. But again, it's using AI to give you that ability to get a playbook built quite quickly. And then I can start to say, well, there's a new deliverable, and I can start assigning that to the team that are going to start to do those activities just by, and off we go. So that is the concept of playbook. So in summary, what we're trying to say is, look, yes, we recognize that teams are going to need knowledge and information, and we need to translate the process. But what we want to be able to do is improve our confidence and reduce organizational drift by forcing that knowledge and forcing that process into delivery, so that, as teams build and use it, we'll capture feedback, and, they'll say, oh, do you know what, that template was rubbish, or actually, we don't have this deliverable in our playbook. We want to add it, and we want to add it to the master. So kind of the next time that we want to clone this playbook and use it for the next project, it benefits from that kind of organizational learning. And because the teams use it, potentially they get much more value from it. Therefore, they're kind of vested in trying to improve it and make it better. Hopefully that kind of just hopefully that gives you enough information just about kind of what the playbook actually is and what it looks like. Yeah, so I mean, we put this in the white paper, but yeah, what we find is when you engineer playbooks, like quality matters. It kind of has to look and feel like the organization's brand. So that's why we made the platform to be able to be white labeled. But most commonly, when we design playbooks, we provide guidance kind of about what the stages are, what are the kind of key decisions that you want to make. When we define the themes, we'll put in, look, here's the standards, here's the information you need to access. And then once we've got the guidance layer set up, then we focus on, well, kind of what are the key deliverables, activities, and products. And I'd say most playbooks we actually engineer and build tend to be much more product-led, especially in the kind of project program management world. This one we recently pushed out, and what we use here is kind of lean manufacturing to say, look, when it comes to the types of playbooks that you have, you kind of have to think about, well, if I looked at my portfolio, how many, and you can look at this either as a consulting firm or just as you manage a portfolio of projects, how many projects kind of sit in the kind of runner and repeater types where, you know, I could build a playbook much that could be really specialized. You know, if I look at the portfolio and I've got 100 projects, maybe 60% of them fit that kind of runner and repeater. We do this project every year. We're always delivering this type of solution. Common one I had was, you know, we're doing robotic process automation. You know, we have to follow a step process. You know, how can I get that codified into a playbook? Or some of the other FS examples, you know, we're doing a data migration, we're doing a platform migration. What's the standard process, policy process that we go through for the execution of that? But obviously, as you get to the kind of more transformational, bigger projects, or potentially maybe like, you know, they are supplier led, you know, we're doing HR or SAP, we're doing a big ERP implementation. I still need a playbook that kind of adds our kind of controls, our life cycle, but you know, the level of customization that playbook's going to need is going to be a lot larger than a kind of a repeater runner playbook. But it's just using this framework to help you build that library of playbooks that help you kind of reduce the degree of customization. And ideally, with runners, the idea is to try and see if you can push more out of your portfolio into BAU. One of the kind of common problems I had is actually I was doing BAU change simply because the process wasn't written down. Therefore, it had to be treated like a project. We had to scope it like a project and understand it. But actually what it was a kind of repeat change that we did year on year. And it was really trying to use playbooks to kind of systemize that so that we didn't have to manage it under project governance. So that's the kind of concept. John, if you're on, I thought I'd put your the kind of best example, I think, where we've built kind of an enterprise playbook is for John, who works for Altus. And if you look at it, yeah, Apex is what they call the platform. And as you can see, it goes through all of the technical competencies that are actually required to bring about successful change management. How that then translates into Method Grid as a kind of platform is to then basically each of those colors basically translates into the playbook. So it gives people the ability to say, well, look, here's all the PMO project management activities that we need to do the project. Here's all the test management. Here's all the solution architecture. So this is the bit I kind of stressed at the start. Very rarely are we just building a playbook that is just, oh, well, these are just the project management activities. What we tend to be designing now is a much more kind of integrated change management playbook that pulls it all together. John, I don't know if you want to talk about Apex or bring it to life.
Yeah, no, thanks, Pip. Yeah, no, hi everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as Pip says, you know, we've got our sort of standard Apex framework and toolkit that we've essentially codified using the platform. And I think the way that we benefited heavily from the platform is that we use that as our sort of starting point, our master grid, that we have then developed a sort of a catalog of playbooks across both program delivery and all the core services that typically go alongside that in terms of small continuous change, mergers and acquisitions, PMO as a service, obviously change management, assurance, transformation, those kind of flavors of playbook, alongside other catalogs we've been developing that are more domain specific. So whether it's insurance, or investments, wealth management, etc., we can still leverage that same master grid to then kind of build out dedicated catalogs in a consistent way to kind of handle scenarios specific to those domains. Things like, as you say, vendor selections, policy or policy admin systems, benchmarking, cost benchmarking, operating model design, etc. You can kind of lift and shift a lot of that content and then repurpose it so that you are able to spin up new, as you say, very customized for the client scenario playbooks very quickly, and show consistent sort of methodology and ways of working, backed up by obviously our own underlying understanding and best practices, toolkits, etc., as you've mentioned, Pip. So it's been really powerful in terms of helping to codify our methodology that we've built up and used over the last sort of 18 years at Altus, but also so use it both internally for our own delivery kind of consistency, but also to then start supporting client engagements as well, so they've got something to accelerate the way they deliver. So yeah, it's been very powerful in that sense.
I think that one of the kind of key aspects for the kind of playbook concept, and it's probably one for we kind of call it the endowment effect. What we're doing when we try and clone playbooks and give it to the individual teams is to say, look, here's everything you need, and here's the kind of guardrails or guidance you need. But actually, what we want to encourage them is to then take ownership of the solution. Like, humans have a natural desire to want to kind of be creative and solve problems. And that's not really great when all the content and methodology is really static, because ideally what we need it to be is dynamic, and we're like, oh, teams want to be able to move it around and adjust it. And the whole concept of being able to clone and give an instance to the team is really getting them vested that this is actually not something that's just static that you're going to have to look at, but actually it's something that we want you to own. We want you to design. We want you to bring your expertise to bring it to life. We want transparency on that. But once you've done that, we expect you then to be able to track, deliver, and evidence that you've that's the way that you've got it. And it's really helping teams just be transparent between what assurance and audit need to say, yep, they are following the process, but also, the kind of under delegation risk, or the kind of constant, how do I do X? How do I do Y? And a lot of your senior kind of expertise people just get bogged down with people asking, how do you do this? How do you do that? And it's really trying to make that a lot easier and help teams be more productive and be more efficient in that. So I think obviously we talked a lot there. So just open really. I'll stop sharing so we can see each other. But yeah, just open really forum for some questions that you might have about the concept and playbooks.
Thank you, Pip. We've got a couple of questions that came up through the chat. Jason, do you want to voice your question first? I can see we're asking about MI.
Yeah, I mean, MI is one of the things at the portfolio level that it always takes a hell of a lot of effort to try and get right. I mean, you've got a great tool there that should have all of the information in there. But I mean, have you got anything that you can demo that can give us a feel for the sort of MI that you can kind of pluck out, whether that's at kind of executive committee level or down to sort of program portfolio level?
Yeah, sure. All of the kind of playbooks. When you create instances, you can move those instances into particular folders, and clients do that to kind of move, okay, well, look, we've got this portfolio, or we've got this program, it's made up of these projects, each project has its own playbook, and they kind of move playbooks into folders, and then the platform then allows you to kind of report on, yes, the overall status of those playbooks. I didn't show you, you have a timeline view in the playbook as well, so you can switch between the grid view and the timeline view. And if you want to then view a kind of portfolio view of that timeline and how dependencies connected between different playbooks and grids, you can facilitate that view. But then you would get all of the kind of where are people on tasks, where are people on stage gate compliance, and the progress of how that playbook is being completed and progress. I think we don't yet, I think it's probably for later in our roadmap journey, Jason, which is we will probably engineer the ability, as you can build playbooks, but you can then also build tables of data. So if you want to add risk and raid and have that as tables linked to a grid, and you want to codify, well, I want all the data to look like this, and I want to switch between the playbook and then access data tables to record risks, we think that will be another addition where that would then be a complete solution for portfolio management, because you'll have all the data. But tends to be what most clients use us at the moment is there's an API and they pull out all our data and feed that into other data to build that kind of portfolio view of information, because there'll be like SAP and cost management that we won't integrate yet with. That's further down, but there's kind of other systems they use to track like timesheets and recording for projects. So I'd say it's a kind of currently it's more driven by other systems that control portfolio, but we're just trying to build and constantly iterate the platform to facilitate that the end journey.
We have a question from George in the chat, and I can see, Faye, you've got your hand raised as well. So I don't know which one we would like to cover first. Faye, do you want to maybe voice your question first?
I think George was first. We'll go with George. He's waiting
Yeah.
patiently.
George, yes, please.
You're too polite. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Great presentation. I think there's always a trade-off between giving the flexibility to project managers and project teams and program teams to increase their buy-in versus, as Jason was just alluding to, having some consistency across the piece to enable, top-down aggregation. Bottom-up aggregation. So you got top-down MI. Anyway, I sort of was a bit fearful as you went through that presentation, that it reminded me a bit of a previous organization I was in where with Jira we gave users sort of total freedom, and it ended up being just an awful lot of information, quite useful down at the delivery level, but totally unaggregatable because we had over 1,000 instances of Jira and nothing would add up. So I just wonder, what do you do to prevent that scenario?
Yeah, it's a good one. Really what we're trying to do with a playbook is when we engineer playbooks for kind of the assurance delivery, George, it's kind of saying, well, look, what are the kind of mandatory high-level controls and evidence that we need to assure that, yes, projects have been executed safely. So it tends not to get tied up in the weeds. A lot of them are like, okay, well, look, we have to have the signed contract, we have to have this, we have to have requirements, there has to be signature X and signature Y for us to progress, and that gives us the confidence that, i.e. the drift hasn't drifted so far. What we find where a lot of noise is created, some will create like when we do agile playbooks, so we'll build a playbook which will be, look, how many iterations are there, like the 12-week iterations, and you've put in the number of sprints that you want. And what they do then is they build other playbooks for, okay, well, where are all the stories, where's all the tracking at that granular level in a separate playbook, and then you can connect playbooks together and the teams can navigate. There's the sprint, yes, on the tracking, yes, the sprint things have been done, but actually when it comes to the detail, there's other playbooks that are connected to the kind of master one. So it kind of at least puts the purpose of each playbook very clear for how the teams use it, so that it doesn't just become a aggregated mess of 1,000 user stories integrated into what becomes quite a complex journey. I think the concept of like the must-have, the kind of mandatory control bit, that question. So we do you can specify on the playbook which elements are mandatory, and then you can filter and teams can see it. The other aspect is and it's a balance that we always kind of work towards or struggle with. It says, look, we don't really want to make the playbook a workflow. You have to do X, then you have to do Y. I just find complex processes, again, just break. There are controls that we want to say, look, we have to have sign off, and you have to put that person, and it has to be that role, and you have to have evidence that's happened. Tick, great. But when it comes to kind of stage gates, I'd say most stage gates in reality are conditional pass with a bit of whip, and everyone's going, oh, is it safe to progress? And we were like, well, we don't want the platform to be that rigid because people will just stop using it and work around it. We're trying to say, well, actually, okay, yeah, we want to record a conditional pass, we want to capture the outcomes, great, but we actually want to progress on to the next stage because that's in reality what happens.
Faye, do you want to raise your question?
Yes, please. You can hear me okay? Good afternoon, everyone. Hope we're all okay. So it's really a case of, for me, it's integration, but also controlled integration is probably the subject I want to discuss. So let's just start with the difficult one, and then we'll get easier. So it's very much about the security elements of the platform. As we all know, there are sort of secretive projects and commercially sensitive projects. How can you ring fence those so that only certain people can access them?
Yeah, so you've got the ability to specify which people can access your playbooks, and you can, as it's a SaaS platform, you can share your playbooks with clients or suppliers. So we have some clients that they will create user accounts for clients, they'll create user accounts for their suppliers, and they will, when they access it, they don't access all the playbooks, they can only access the playbooks that they have access for. When it comes to security, we have different modes of operation. So obviously with some of the kind of high security clients, like SSE, BAE, or some of the more secure clients, sometimes the actual app instance of the application is completely hosted in a separate instance versus the instance that general clients have on the cloud provider. So a lot of that just depends on the kind of security client requirements we have, but we're kind of stretched. A lot of it's our kind of background is kind of architecture, engineering, construction, and so we get power and energy tends to be a really closed system. I think SSE was the toughest one to date, but yeah, fantastic client, but really put it through the paces in terms of the security posture.
Indeed. Yeah, critical national infrastructure provider, so understandable completely. So I've got a bit of a follow-up question to that as well. So that's I suppose, the constraint of information being published, and you've got the opposite side of it, which is the ability to integrate to tools. So I suppose the work in progress kind of activities, you've got teams and the ability to be able to pop from the playbook out to other applications to be able to maybe instigate a chat, stuff like that. How does that work?
Yeah, we do. So we facilitate, naturally the key integration is 365. So you can connect to OneDrive, SharePoint, and if you've got templates or you've got files that you use with SharePoint and OneDrive and stuff like that, then you can actually just, instead of uploading those files, you just can connect links to it. And the kind of collaboration chat is that we hook into Teams.
Okay.
So that you only have kind of one conversation, and if you're assigned to tasks, you get an email. You can configure your kind of reminders, but you can see chat and interaction over email, and you can see you'll get nudged for tasks and activities as well. So keep you honest.
Fantastic. So we don't. As you're not wasting your time chasing people, it actively chases people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Just when you're assigning people, you can kind of nudge and say, look, where are you with this? Or if they chat, you'll see that on your email, you'll see it on Teams, and naturally you'll see it if you're using the application. But it's just helping you be connected on that.
And I probably should have said this at the beginning. This is a dream come true, because it's I've been looking for something like this for a long time. And we tried playing with DevOps to modify DevOps to become a risk register and all the other elements, and kind of an artifact track. Almost a Kanban board type style delivery, but it's never been as robust as this looks.
Well, I've built a few.
Really good.
I've built a few Kanban playbooks before for some clients, but it's not what we're designed for. Probably one of the most ones that surprised us was staff onboarding playbook. Yes, we were building this for program project delivery, and one client said, "Oh, by the way, I've just put all our stuff onboarding journey into a kind of 12-week structured plan, all the elements, all the training." And I was like, "Oh, fantastic! We'll get that on the."
Makes perfect sense. Yeah. No, it's good. And if you can plug AI into it, you're going to have a fantastic, even better tool. So brilliant.
Um,
A few more questions coming through, and I know, Zishan, you've raised your hand. Do you want to start first, and then I'll read out the questions in the chat?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's probably related to some of the other questions as well. But firstly, thanks, Pip, for the demo. I guess I wanted to understand a little bit how this integrates with other tools as well, and how, if the idea is to have this as one single platform, how you would manage some of the more granular elements of projects, tasks, and if you are already using legacy tools, then what would be the migration path for an organization to come into this?
Yeah, most common environment. So there's like the most basic integration that we do is like a URL link. So I think the question is there, like, do you directly interface with Jira? Not at the moment. But what clients will do is say, well, look, normally there's a Jira URL that you can share. So you might have the sprint on the playbook, and let's say if Jira is used or DevOps is used for the particular story or for the sprint, and it's kind of there's a sprint URL that you can use, you can put that URL, and then people can click on that link, and it'll open up Jira or DevOps directly within that kind of access. I think we will naturally over time like develop the API to provide a connector to Jira DevOps, just because naturally I think it'll be the burn down. They'll want to track burn down within the sprint object so they can see it. So that's kind of the kind of core interfaces. We do provide an API in the platform that allows you to kind of directly integrate with systems. So some clients will integrate this with their kind of commissioning system. If we win this work, then it'll create a grid automatically. So there are a few integrations clients will build. I think our development journey is how we build more kind of repeatable connectors to kind of proven tools.
Yeah, thank you.
Makes sense.
You can see, you've probably seen the question. Justino is asking about what is the effort to set a playbook up and then to maintain it, and who is doing it? Is it usually PMO?
Yeah, good question. So we there's a journey we went on with here with AI. When we used to build playbooks probably 18 months ago, building a playbook, a complete enterprise playbook. I think for our largest client, it took us it was a 9-month build for a global kind of advisory playbook, which codified all their knowledge. We probably build the equivalent now using kind of AI and sort of fine-tuned language models probably in about 6 weeks. So we use AI to kind of fine-tune. We'll say, look, have you got your policy, your standards, information? We fine-tune the language model on that content. And then we can ask it to build the playbook. We ask it to build e-learning, and then we ask it to build video explainers. If you want, we can even put sign language on video explainers. Again, we did that for Network Rail, and again, that's just using AI to build someone to actively sign language on content. So yeah, I think Justine, I think normally we challenge ourselves to get playbooks built for between sort of 6 weeks that they're out for pilot in use in operations. It tends to be, on the question, it tends to be PMO functions that own the platform, and they own the methodology, because they normally own the methodology and approach. But the playbook itself, once you've got it, is quite easy to maintain and manage. You can use AI to update the copy. If somebody identifies a change, you update the master, and then you can also, if you make a change on your master and that's the new copy, you can go and then sort of ask the clones to copy that new version and paste it into the plan. So you've got the ability to kind of clone templates from other grids.
Brilliant. Zishan, do you have another question, or maybe it was you do? Yeah, please.
Yep, I'll lower my hand. Thank you.
Playbook suit waterfall project management and existing processes. How suitable is a tool for iterative run? I've built a few playbooks for Agile. Actually, probably works. Like I said, it's that combination of, well, if we think of stage, and stage is a bad word. I mean, we could change it to increment, but what the agile playbooks are actually quite easy build, because it tends to be, look, we need to do this bit up front to kind of mobilize the project, get it set up. And then it's really, okay, well, how many iterations are we doing? And iterations normally follow a kind of repeatable pattern. So here's all the activities that we want to do for each iteration. How many iterations is it? Oh, it's 3 iterations. How many sprints in each iteration? How many IP events? So very quickly you can say, well, look, I want to scale an agile project. It's four iterations over a year, and it's these number of sprints. And then if you want to then build, okay, well, we need a Kanban for the kind of backlog, then they build other playbooks that are connected to that kind of project tracking playbook for the kind of overall iteration. That's how we find that works for teams. My guidance on the agile one is, because I did it with Capita, which was I had playbooks for just controlling the project. We were using DevOps, but we were using DevOps to do pipeline code execution and release. Therefore, stories, when we made the decision, it was kind of like stories and test cases we felt would have to sit in DevOps, because they were driving kind of automation framework and DevOps. But if we weren't using kind of pipelines to iterate and do code, I was like, well, we would default to kind of use method grid, because I'm not actually using it to kind of trigger a release or coding or needed as evidence to come back. If that makes sense. Question from Alex.
Yeah. Hopefully it makes sense, but I'll read out for the group. It's really, I recognise all the benefits, all the hotspots that you touched on there, but for me, it's the EQ side, gaining that adoption, incentivizing. I've seen this work 2 ways, carrot or stick. So it's either built into people objectives and it's run through that MI type approach, or it's to create that value, demonstrate the groundswell, and really create that change community. So we work in a very lean team, and the first thing to go is governance and reporting. So to keep that in place, use your term guardrails. Just I'm keen to understand your experience on how you've incentivized teams and not let it wither and die. I think a lot of these tools are great when they're first put in and there's a lot of hype around them and a lot of support, but I have seen them wither and die as they age as well.
We do it. We do quite an interesting way of doing the implementation. So very rarely will we go into a large enterprise client and say, right, we're going to mandate this from .1. What we tend to do is obviously we build the playbook and we slowly build the team and get them involved in the design, the build, and they will vent quite a lot of their frustrations about, oh, well, we've never had this and we've always needed it. When it comes to implementation, we kind of use the diffusion of innovation approach, which is there are going to be people that just will just be laggards. They'll kind of reject change. What we sort of focus on in the first sort of 6 months is to say, look, let's find a good group of people that just get it and get them using it on projects to build the evidence that this is a good way, and it kind of improves delivery. And we've done this with a number of clients, like big enterprise clients, like SSE was a 4-week build of a playbook. But what we did a fantastic job on it, and we said, look, this is how we can use it for a very small use case to get control over XY. We wrote that as a case study. We pushed it out, and eventually, we basically created demand, like more of a pull relationship. And it was like, oh, we want to use it for this, we want to use it for that. And that is our real, our approach to implementation is really just build enough momentum first, because then it will make it a lot easier to say, okay, well, if it becomes bigger and you want it to be scaled, there's enough evidence in the business and enough supporters to be like, okay, actually, yeah, this is really helpful. And that tends to be, I know it takes longer, but it tends to be a much more successful implementation in the end.
Thanks. I think it's got to be frictionless and omni-channel. So, you've got to be able to do it on your phone. You've got to be able to do it,
Yeah.
If it's not omni-channel, if it's not frictionless in our environment, it's a blocker. So to take away those blockers, as many as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got a few playbooks that are accessed on offshore rigs on iPads, as well as laptops and desktops. So we kind of do, as it's a kind of SaaS application, it's just accessible on the web, so you can access it from kind of any device in any location. However, we have had to optimize the app to make sure that it works on a satellite connection on a offshore rig in Scotland.
Yeah, it looks great, Pip, by the way. You know,
cool. Thanks for feedback.
Looks fantastic. Yeah.
Cool. Well, you're on mute, Muriel. Apologies.
Sorry. Yes, I was saying we're completely out of time, but Simon wanted to talk about what's the typical cost of an implementation and ongoing license cost. I don't know if we can address this now, or if we would prefer to do a follow-up call. I don't know what's your view, Pip.
I mean, be open with it. I think there's a couple of options. I think we would say, look, if you want to start using it in the business and start like prototyping it and improving it, normally the kind of initial, that startup kind of give it a go license is about 25 grand. And then, that'll go up. The license will only ever go up to about, the biggest license we offer is what we call monthly active users, which gets to about 120 grand, which is, just, monitored on monthly active users. So there's kind of a license, I'd say, like between 25 and 120 is the kind of range that you need to think about. The question on the playbook, like how much cost it is really like the level of depth and quality you need to be. And that can kind of range from, it can be as sort of a 50K project right up to what we've done with some of the bigger enterprises, which is, it's near probably $500,000 investment, but that is, video explainers, that's e-learning, that's, a complete enterprise build for it. So that's the kind of range I'd say that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, that's really helpful. I know we've run out of time, but it's also quite timely because I'm doing this kind of playbook process, obviously outside of a tool like yours, and wrestling with obviously the mass adoption of Jira and trying to kind of how do we interface with that and how do we drive that kind of the triggering within Jira and the right tickets. So that's my question about Jira really. But I would be interested in a follow-up conversation to kind of explore a potential proof of concept. So yeah, we can follow up offline.
Cool. Yeah, I think that goes for anyone. I mean, obviously, I think me and Muriel, when we designed this, there was a lot of kind of information that we were going to have to give you guys to kind of help you understand what it is. But yeah, if you want to kind of reach out to Muriel, and very happy to kind of do a further kind of follow-up discovery. What we find most practical for teams is to do prototype. Give us a process, and normally takes about a day workshop, and we'll try and see if we can actually build a playbook for you that's something that's more tangible for kind of your business and your problem that you want to solve. Cool.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. I think, I think it's been very insightful. I think you all agree that this is a game changer, and that's why I really wanted to host this webinar. And Pip, thank you for your presentation and taking the time to take us through your solution and playbooks. I think it's amazing. Thank you for your time, everyone, and I look forward to interacting further on the topic and to speak again very soon.
Cheers, guys. Lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
Thanks all. Cheers.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.